general managers are going to go about it, coaches as well. There's just lots to really think about, lots to kind of keep in mind. So, all right, Kameron Arnold joining us here up and on the program. All right, well, you went up with the Washington Commanders, but looking at this particular draft, it is defensive centric, and I think there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that can really help with a team. And when you looked at, being in Washington, because to me, I feel like they could be in a market with getting an edge rusher and maybe more in particular, a guy like Ruben Bain. So I think there's going to be a lot of shockers in this draft. How do you kind of see this as far as draft night goes? Because it's a party, is a lot of different shockers, but even for upgrades for teams that they know they really need it.
I would say, the draft is, a really exciting time for, these young guys and these up and coming, draft picks. But yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I can't say too much. I mean, I'm a young guy myself, it's still getting my feet wet. So, you know, um, I would just say, it's a lot of exciting young prospects going through this draft, just like there is every year. And, that it's an exciting time for these guys. And, they should, just enjoy the process and enjoy the moment. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of, great, talented guys in this draft. And yeah.
When I look at the NFL and a lot of teams that, we thought would have been playoff teams, but then just fell short. So we know that there's going to be some much needed pieces, much needed positions that need to be filled. Right now with the Kansas City Chiefs, we know that I kind of felt like they took a year off in this per se because Patrick Mahomes recovering from an injury. There wasn't a whole lot of production as far as getting them back in because the division's tougher. Like now you got the Chargers playing as good as they are, the Broncos winning the division for the first time in 2015, and the Raiders ended up addressing a lot of pieces. So when you kind of look into the vibe in the organization right now, because lots of teams, when this happens, will go one of two avenues. It's one, we're rebuilding, we need to get a lot more pieces, or two, we're in a reboot mode because last year didn't end up the way we did, but we're only going to take 1 year off and resurge ourselves because these guys are ready to play and they're ready to get themselves back into contention. Like, what's the vibe got to be like for Kansas City? Because they are hungry. They want to address this thing as best as possible to get them back into that competition that they were unlucky with last year.
Yeah, with Kansas City, I mean the standard's been set. That they have a reputation of just always being that team that is around in January and February, and I think that this time is just like you said, just to rebuild and really just reestablish the culture of winning and getting back to what Kansas City does best, and that's being in the playoffs and competing for a Super Bowl. So Kansas City, they're taking one step at a time in this process. And we're just building right now and just taking it day by day and just getting back to the standard and the culture of Kansas City Chiefs.
So being in Washington, you got a chance to see Jaden Daniels up front in person, and I think he's a very talented quarterback. I really do believe the future is bright, but I will say, though, Cam, there was a point where I watched Jaden Daniels, and I know he is like his body build kind of, a little bit more like, put it to you this way. I'd say just adding a few like pounds to just bulk up a bit because you're withstanding hits. You're taking hits from all these guys left and right. And I do think that if he matches up to the physicality that we've been seeing for the last 2 seasons now, where defenses are getting ferocious, it's more trench warfare and ground game than we've ever seen it before. So when you look at Jaden Daniels, I think this is an opportunity for a bounce back year after injuries and fighting the inconsistencies in some areas. Because to me, I think there's a bright future here in Washington. They went through so much of a culture change from previous ownership to having this, and to where now Dan Quinn, he's a guy that, listen, you put your nose down and you get physical and you win those trench warfare battles. That's where you're really going to be a competitive team at the end of the day. Because the NFC East, we'll see what happens by draft night, but I do feel like there is room for improvement and room to really kind of take away by storm game after game in a 17-week season.
Yeah, I think last year, Jaden just, had an unfortunate uh dealing of, injuries. But I definitely think, he'll bounce back, and, he'll show everybody that he's the same guy that he was when he first came into the league. So I think he'll be, great this season, and he'll bounce back. And I think Washington, they're hungry to get back to where they were the previous year as well as a whole. So I think that they're just gonna take advantage of the draft, and I think they've taken advantage of free agency, and they're just getting back to what they're what they established that year one with that coaching staff. So yeah.
Final question here for you as I look at the draft. I am looking at one position in particular, and a position that you play in linebacker. I'm noticing a really good trend as an upward value of how important it is to have a great linebacking core. Whenever you got one who's predicated to being a tackler and another one who is that voice to setting up the front seven. I talked with a lot of people on the defensive side of the ball, especially safeties, because they voice out up and onto the secondaries and then voice it back to their middle linebacker to say, hey, this is the setup formation. This is what the quarterback's trying to do, and kind of relay that. So when you look at these linebackers, because I'm looking at Sonny Styles, I'm looking at a Arvell Reese, a couple of these linebackers coming in, and it's going to work one of two ways. There'll be ferocious tacklers to stop the run or add pressure up and into the quarterback, and some that are vocalizing with the front seven of setting up the scheme plan to not only just acquire pressure, but also be aware of the scheme set offensively of what they're trying to build around, especially tight end positions. Because once the middle of the field's open, that's dicey. And so when you look at that, like what in your stature, when you look at a linebacker of his responsibilities, what is something to expect of this? Because I'm excited for this position in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, the linebacker position is extremely important to the defense. Linebackers are the quarterbacks of the defense, and a great linebacker is always evaluated by how violent he plays and how well he communicates. And I think that those are two attributes that everyone is looking for in terms of finding a linebacker. And as well as just being a great tackler sideline to sideline, and also being involved in the pass game as well, just because the NFL game is primarily a passing league. And linebackers is just is a really important position. I think that there's a lot of great guys in this draft coming out that will look to make an immediate impact with a lot of teams in the league. So yeah, it should be exciting to see. But yeah, linebacker is extremely valuable and extremely important to defenses, and every team is trying to make sure that they have the right one, because they know how valuable it is to have a great linebacker.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, Cam, appreciate you for coming on to the program here. Best of luck to you in the next season, because I know we're looking at what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be trying to do. I mean, there's a lot to think about with the GM, the coach, and such. So it's going to be pretty busy, but at least you're getting a chance to enjoy the next couple of months, and then reporting back up to work and getting up and into camps, man, it's going to be exciting. So best of luck to you and to the team. And we'll see what happens up and on draft night, and where the Kansas City Chiefs, what we should expect for the next up and coming season. Take care of yourself, my friend.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, we got through a lot of the interviews at the best time that we did. And yeah, it's just exciting. And I think that there are going to be a lot of changes up into